All right, look, I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. If you're drowning in leads that go nowhere and your sales team is constantly complaining about the quality of those leads, you're probably being fed an entire load of, well, you know what. See, this marketing and sales disconnect, it's costing businesses millions of dollars. Yet after 35 years of founding multi-million-dollar companies and investing seven-figure fortunes in sales education, from Closers.io to Sandler to, the whole shebang, I've discovered the problem isn't what you think. See, the biggest lie they're selling you is that all leads are created equal. Your business is stuck in a vicious cycle because you're using the same word lead to describe completely different things. It's like calling a sparkler the same thing as a dynamite. They're both pretty fun, but one has a much bigger impact. So today I'm going to show you the exact solution that's helped my clients increase their conversion rates by 300%, 400%. And it's by fixing this one critical language problem between your marketing department and your sales department. So stick around, because not only will you learn this fundamental framework that bridges this gap, but I'm also going to give you the exact benchmark percentages that you need to track and what to do if you're not hitting them. And as a reminder, you can download this playbook and all the spreadsheets and all my other playbooks, everything I use and show on this channel, at the link on my channel page. It's free to get. Go ahead and download it now. Now first, we need to understand why this disconnect happens in the first place. So let's get down to the truth. Have you ever wondered why your marketing team celebrates hitting lead goals while your sales team is struggling to close sales? See, the core issue destroying your revenue potential, it isn't bad marketing or incompetent sales. It's something far more fundamental. We're using the same word, lead, to describe completely different things. Now, this language disconnect is silently sabotaging your entire growth strategy. But once you understand the four critical distinctions I'm about to share with you, you'll be able to diagnose exactly where your pipeline is breaking down. See, the language we use is critically important. Lead, MQL, SQL, closed won, closed lost. Those are the 5 most important words in all of sales and marketing, and really all of business growth. And it's the real killer in your B2B and high-ticket sales. It's this massive disconnect between marketing and sales, and your language is the root of the problem. Let me show you this perfect example that illustrates what I'm talking about. So let me tell you about Jason. Jason's a SaaS founder that I worked with last year. His marketing team was generated hundreds of leads every month, hitting their KPIs, and they were getting paid all their bonuses. But when I looked at their sales numbers, they were closing less than 2% of these so-called leads. The sales team was super frustrated, and marketing was obviously defensive, and Jason was simply watching his runway shorten and shorten and shorten, while everyone on his team was just pointing fingers at each other. So his business was stalling. Sales were drying up, and the blame game was in full swing. So here's what we did. We implemented this exact framework I'm about to show you, and within 60 days, their close rate jumped to over 14%. Now, this is without spending an extra dollar on any marketing or any additional sales training. So what was the difference that we did? We stopped calling everything a lead and created clear definitions that allowed both teams to measure what actually mattered. And this is the big secret: getting marketing and sales to work together by creating a constant feedback loop that kills the eternal complaint from sales. These leads suck. So let's fix this and get your revenue growing every single month, every single year. I want to kind of walk you through this process and show you how it all works together, and how just a little bit of clarity can fill your sales pipeline and also provide a direct feedback loop to your marketing department. This is a machine that creates better marketing that actually generates higher and higher quality leads. And it's also a constantly improving machine. See, in its basic form, a lead is really just a name, an address, and a phone number, email address, or physical address. And we can scoop these up from all sorts of places. Think about it. You could buy a list, or you could scrape LinkedIn results, or hell, even just open the phone book, if you remember those, and dial for dollars. Now, this sounds incredibly stupid. No one would ever do this. But that's really all a lead is. It's contact information. See, you don't know anything about them. They don't know anything about you. You're literally just dialing for dollars. You're wasting your time, you're wasting your money, and most importantly, you're wasting your opportunity. So you see what I mean? The term lead is used so readily that it becomes almost meaningless when it comes to actually sales potential. Now, let's contrast this with a marketing qualified lead. An MQL is different. An MQL is someone who has raised their hand and said, hey, I want to talk with you about your solution. They want to talk. They have a problem and they're actively looking to solve that problem. This is what your marketing should be doing. It's a simple message that gets those with the problem that you solve to raise their hands while turning away and actually repelling those who are not even remotely interested. Now, this could be someone who, registers for a webinar or downloads a valuable resource like a lead magnet, or someone that requests a demo or signs up for a specific consulting consultation. The key here is intent. They've taken an action that indicates they're exploring a solution like yours. This is a completely different animal than a cold contact. And that intent, it's what tells you that they have a problem and they're actually searching for a solution. And I think you'll agree, this is a much higher quality of lead. It's a true MQL. Now, I see this all the time, people doing lead scoring, where they're tracking website visits and email opens and all the activity. And yeah, this does imply there's some sort of buyer intent, but man, you're still totally in the dark with these people. That person hasn't raised their hand and they haven't requested help. Technically, they're still just a lead. And in today's world, we're dealing with bots and scrapers and email spam filters. Those trigger open rates all the time. They give off false signals that at the end of the day are just completely wasting your valuable time and your business's precious opportunity. Isn't it better to invest your very limited time, money, and resources that builds out marketing that gets people to actually want to talk to you and signal that they're ready? And then you're in the game. See, most of the time that automated lead scoring, it's just kind of completely garbage. It's also kind of lazy marketing. What it does is it tells you your marketing team really doesn't know how to drive MQLs. They're taking the scraps and trying to make something of value from them. Now, I'll use this example. So in most B2B SaaS cases, it would be something like them registering for a webinar. That's the one we're all pretty familiar with. So let's go ahead and just use that as an example. So in order to watch the webinar, they have to put in their name, email, and phone number typically. But now you have that information by which is the trigger that turns this person from a lead into an MQL that is marketing qualified. This person is stopped, they've raised their hand, and they're indicating an intent and an interest in what you have to offer. And by whatever the topic of the webinar is, that's what they're interested in. They're telling you they want to know more, so they've raised their hand. Now that MQL in your CRM system can be tagged as an MQL. They're no longer a lead. That's the trigger that moves the prospect from lead to MQL. And this is an important distinction because when it comes to the metrics of sales and marketing, we need to know this conversion percentage. So a lead technically is worthless. An MQL is extraordinarily valuable. And then the final metric here would be then obviously okay, they go to a setter call and the setter call qualifies them. They have the money, they have the interest, they have the time, whatever. And now they get a discovery call booked or a sales call booked and the salesperson can do their job. That qualification process is what transfers someone from an MQL to an SQL. And it doesn't matter how many steps in the process that your sales has, if it's one call close or a 6-month process, that person stays in SQL until it's either closed won or closed lost. So their status here and these labels that we use for the status are very, very important. And then finally, we get the sale closed or won. And obviously this number matters a lot. Now, how do you use this to grow your business? To start with, you have to have these marketing and sales numbers, right? You can now start to unwind if you have a marketing problem or if you have a sales problem. So in your CRM, and in your business generally speaking. It's really, really important how you label people as they come into your pipelines. Again, a lead is just a name, an email, and a phone number. It's pretty much worthless. An MQL is someone who's taken an action and actively said, hey, I want to have a conversation. And a sales qualified lead is someone who's been on the phone, qualified, and now can start the sales process. You're not going to waste your time or their time. And this is why it's important to have these numbers and measurements, because you need to measure these steps and the conversion ratios in order to diagnose what's working and what isn't working. Do you notice the progression? It's a filtering process. Not every lead becomes an MQL, and not every MQL becomes an SQL. And that's okay. That's how a healthy pipeline works. The problem arises when businesses, and yes, those misleading marketers, they lump everyone into that lead bucket. What this does is this inflates your numbers. It creates false hope. And it's the source of your constant friction between marketing and sales. You know, sales complains about bad leads because they're being handed just a ton of unqualified contacts. And then marketing feels like their efforts are being wasted. But here's the secret to bridging the gap and creating a constant improvement machine. Use clear definitions and a constant feedback loop. Now, what do I mean by feedback loop? How the system works is that when sales takes an SQL and they take them through that discovery process and they find and get all the problems and desires, which by the way are two sides of the same coin. One is an away pattern and the other is a towards pattern, but they're both essentially moving to the decision that your prospect needs to make and your sales team, but they're both essentially moving to a decision. Your sales team is on the front lines talking to these SQLs all day. They're uncovering the real pain points, you know, the desires and the frustrations that drive people to buy your product. Now, this information is pure gold. This is where recording and analyzing your sales calls becomes crucial. You know, what are they saying? What are the biggest challenges that they have? And what's keeping them from achieving what they want? Now, I've got some really interesting projects cooking using AI to do this, and I'll share that later. But for now, that feedback should get back to your marketing department. And thus, we're able to create better quality leads. MQLs, not leads. I should be pretty specific here with my language since that's what this whole video is about. And this is how we create a feedback loop, because that's how marketing can create content and offers and campaigns that attract the higher quality leads. It's by using the language that the people who are actually experiencing the problems your solution solves and using that in your marketing. It's a continuous cycle of improvement. Now, I promised you the benchmarks, and I always deliver. Here are the exact conversion rates you need to track and the targets you should aim for. So when I start out from leads to MQLs, my target conversion rate is 20%. Now, what that means is for every 100 people who see your marketing, 10 or 20 of them should raise their hand and say, hey, I want to talk. So how do you measure this? You track your opt-ins to your conversion mechanism divided by the total number of visitors. If you're below 10%, your message isn't resonating with your target audience. If you're above 10% or 20%, then you're dialed in. Your market to message is working. So step number 2, transferring MQLs to SQLs. With that, I usually target 40 to 50% if you're doing good marketing. So what this means is nearly half of the people who express interest in your offer or in your marketing should qualify for a sales conversation. And it's simple to measure. It's simply the number of sales calls qualified and booked divided by the total opt-ins from your marketing. This number should not be below 40%. If it is, your marketing is attracting the wrong people or your qualification process is too strict. Now, your SQL to sales, you're targeting, much higher numbers, 50 to 70 to 80%. What this means is more than half of your qualified leads should become customers. And what this means is you basically take your closed deals and divide it by the total sales conversations. If you're below that 50% mark, your sales process or your offer needs refinement. They're benchmarks that we've developed after years of working with thousands of businesses across dozens of industries. If your numbers are significantly lower in any of these stages, you know where the bottleneck is. Is your marketing attracting the wrong people? Or is your sales dropping the ball with qualified prospects? See, these metrics, they give you the clarity to make decisions that drive your business growth. So stop letting these so-called gurus muddy the waters for you with vague language. Start defining your leads, MQLs, and SQLs clearly, and then implement that feedback loop between your sales and marketing. Track your conversion rates. This is the real secret to generating high-quality leads that drive sustainable growth. This is what helps you as the growth manager to be able to determine if you have a marketing problem or if you have a sales problem. Because without this process and the metrics, you're not going to be able to determine that. You're just guessing. So now you have these marketing benchmarks, and if you fall below those benchmarks, you can clearly see, for example, the conversion rate between MQL and SQL, then you know your quality of leads is bad and you need to get better MQLs. But if your SQLs to closed won is falling off a cliff, then you know you have a sales problem. So this is a short video, but I wanted to make it perfectly clear to you because this is a really important distinction that I see across the board. All companies tend to do this. Just yesterday, I had this conversation about this whole idea of lead scoring. You know, when people do page visits and email opens, it feels really good to the marketer, but it doesn't actually tell you anything. It doesn't allow you to determine if the marketing is good or bad because we may have a ton of leads coming in that score high, but they're not buying. But here's the question, do you have a sales problem or do you have a marketing problem? Well, it isn't either of those things. It's a measuring and language problem. And to solve this, you just watch the numbers that I've shown you here. That's the ultimate lead score test that your business needs to grow. And as the leader, you can manage that system. Now you understand why the language you use in your sales and marketing is critical to aligning your marketing and sales team. With clear definitions and the right metrics, you can diagnose exactly where your growth engine is breaking down. But there's another critical problem I see businesses face once they've fixed this language issue. They don't know how to actually implement the feedback loop between sales and marketing that turns, your average leads into premium opportunities. So what I'm going to do is in an upcoming video, I'm going to show you my exact system for extracting gold from your sales calls and getting that gold back to your marketing department. And I'm going to show you how you can learn to use AI to analyze your customer language patterns that'll transform your marketing message overnight. So if you're tired of chasing your tail with unqualified leads and you're ready to align your marketing and your sales teams for explosive growth, then what I want you to do is go to the main channel page and download my YouTube guide. It has all my playbooks, it has all the spreadsheets, all the scripts, everything we use to run our business. It's absolutely free to download and it's ever growing. Every week I add to it. So again, your time's your most valuable asset. I thank you for that. If you have any questions with this or you disagree with me for anything, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And we'll see you in these next videos.